Hello everyone, this video is in our Chess960 series and we are going to have a look at a fantastic game between Komodo Dragon and Scorpio. This was in the TCEC Season 21 Fischer Random tournament, the final league. Komodo didn't quite make it to the super final, but played some exceptional games as well, and they're really the types of games that when you see it you can't imagine that any engine could ever be stronger than Komodo. I mean, it's really a quite amazing feel for the initiative. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm using today's slightly different GUI, the Hierarchs Explorer GUI. So it's been a long time since I last used this program, but there's a new version out, so I've gone out and bought it, and we'll see how it goes. Some quite nice features. I might do a video on that too sometime. Let's have a look at this position then. So I mean, gradually as I get used to Chess960 and to engine games, you know, more and more basic things come into your head really. I mean, I think the first thing, mindful of Stockfish's problems with corner pieces, corner knights and corner bishops, I think that the first thing that I do nowadays is look at the corner pieces. We've got a knight on h1 here, which is not too bad. I mean, this knight can just go to g3, that's no problem. But we definitely have a little problem with the queen on a1, which doesn't have much scope at the moment. So we're really going to have to try and be kind to this piece. And I suppose, you know, one of the things about it is that you've got to think, really take that into account in your development. I mean, you've got a knight on b1, you could, you know, occupy the center. I mean, you could think about playing moves like d4, then e4, then knight c3. But as soon actually as you play that knight to c3, it suddenly becomes a little bit difficult to think how you're going to get the queen active. So, you know, quite important to think about stuff like that. Anyway, for me, the first thing that I'm going to be thinking about is, in my development scheme, how is that going to help my queen on a1? Now, one of the other things that you notice a lot about engines is that they really, very much shogi style actually, push the pawns in front of their major pieces in order to give them scope. And of course, if you're pushing a pawn in front of a major piece, you know, it's got impetus. I mean, the pawn can be pushed to c5 because it's protected afterwards. So certainly, you know, a number of ideas come to mind. We've got a4, for example, once played on the first move by Magnus Carlsen against Nakamura. It features in Game Changer, actually, that game, when we were talking about passive queens, because the pawn went to a5 and tied down the black queen on a8. But it's definitely a move. b4 is another move, just to open up the line of the queen, but this time the a1 h8 diagonal. Yeah, I mean, I quite like this idea, b4, and then you could play queen b2 and then c4 after. There's c4, which, as you'll see, is the move that was actually played in the end, and this has got a couple of interesting ideas. One of them, of course, is that the rook is activated and the rook can come out to c3 over to the third rank. But the other idea really is that you can play the knight to c3. You know, the knight's on a very natural square here, the normal square, so c3 is a great square, sort of attacking central squares. And when you do that, then actually the white queen can move from a1 to b1. And it's actually quite active there already. I mean, it supports b2 to b4. It's on this lovely b1 h7 diagonal, which is, you know, in the English opening, as this would be, you do often play queen c2. So playing queen b1 is pretty much the same thing. So that's, you know, quite a nice thing. And of course, you know, you don't have to release your major pieces on the very first move. I mean, you can also make a plan of development that then releases them. But, you know, obviously it's very important to take the queen a1 into consideration. Another idea that you could play here is to go g4. And this is quite nice. I mean, it opens up the line of the rook and also frees one of the diagonal pieces as well. And when you go knight g3, develop that corner knight. If you've played g4, the knight can aim for f5 or for h5. It's sort of got control over those squares. Now, another thing that I tend to look at as well with these Fischer Random positions is, well, I mean, with a knight on b1, that's a natural square. It's going to be developing, you know, controlling quite a few squares from c3. That's quite natural. But in general, I'm always wary about committing the knights that are on odd squares too early. I think the reason for that is that, in Fischer Random, a lot of these pawn structures are a lot more pawn structures are possible than in standard chess, simply because the pieces are always different. So I'm never quite sure where my knight wants to go, and it's a short range piece, and once you've committed it to one square, well, it takes a little bit of effort to reposition it. So in general, I'm always looking first to open some lines for my diagonal pieces, the bishops and the queens, and then afterwards thinking, can I maybe then put my knight optimally somewhere. So I mean, from that point of view, moves like d4, e4, e4 and f4, or f4 and g4 are quite interesting, just to open up these two bishops. As I said, I'm a bit wary about playing d4. I want to make sure that I can get my queen out, but something like f4 and g4 seems quite tempting. Just open up the bishops and also at the same time get the rook on g1 active. Well, the move that my engines particularly wanted, and this was actually the TCEC book move, is 1c4. Which makes sense. And now poor Scorpio was a little bit unlucky here, because e5 was the book move. And this is actually not a very good first move. And as soon as you play this, the engine evaluation goes sky high, very high. Why on earth could that be? It's just the first move. The first thing is, it's a very natural move against the English opening, and normally. However, what you really want to do, we've talked already that, the queen in the corners, they need to be developed. And, well, the natural follow-up to 1e5 is to play knight c6 afterwards, to get control over the d4 square, support the pawn on e5. But if you go knight c6, this queen on a8 is going to find it very hard to get out. So this move e5 and the natural stuff that you do after it, it doesn't really address the problem with this queen on a8, and a passive queen can have quite a big influence on the rest of of your development. The other thing is that this knight is coming to g3, and it's aiming very naturally for the f5 square, so it does feel very odd to play e5 and weaken this square immediately, especially considering that after you go knight g3, you're not going to play g6 here, because that would make the knight on h8 tremendously passive. So you're probably going to have to allow a knight to come into f5, which is going to be quite awkward. So e5, not the best move, but Scorpio couldn't do anything about it. I mean, e6 was a move that Hierarchs, the Hierarchs engine, was suggesting, and I find that very sensible as well. Maybe fighting for d5, at the very least opening up the line of the bishop on f8, and not giving up control of f5. c5 was the move that all my engines wanted to play. This was certainly Leela's main idea, but also I think Komodo did it as well. And we got some lovely games here. I'll just show you a few things. f4 now played, as we discussed, opening up the diagonal pieces. Let's have a look. Komodo as black played f5, and Leela came up with some lovely development here. Queen b1, activating the queen, hitting the pawn on f5. Actually, if the pawn was on f5, we'd be hitting the pawn on h7. So queen b1 is a very nice tempo gainer, as just activating the queen and gaining tempi. g6, g4, activating rook and bishop. And now knight f2, so delaying the position of the knight there, and now we're able to activate it via g4. Lovely smooth development from Leela here, and look at those bishops, and now castles, and very pleasant position for Leela, though Komodo managed to hold it, but it was pretty difficult, I have to say. And then we see Komodo as white, again playing f4, g6 from Leela. G4, bishop g7, and now actually Komodo really started to try and make life difficult for this knight on h8. Knight, bishop c6, knight f2. Again, you see this delaying the development of the knight on h1 enables you to move it to f2 rather than g3. And well, this knight is coming out to g4 behind this pawn on g5. Again, super strategy from Komodo here, and well, we got some nice tactics. Bishop on f2 sacrifice, but the rook on g8 is hanging here, and then yeah, I mean, Leela was in some trouble, to be honest. I mean, Leela held this, and its evaluation never went below, you know, sort of 0.4, 0.5, which is a bit borderline for Leela, but not losing. But still, you know, I mean, this was I thought White was really doing very well in this position. So yeah, I mean, quite interesting, and you know, and again, lovely to see, you know, some of the themes that we talk about on the first move, just yeah, just coming back into the real game. But after c4, e5, e3 was played by Komodo. I actually quite like g4 in this position, and this is actually also not a bad move at all. You know, because you're going to open up the line of the bishop to g2, and the knight comes to g3, and we're really clamping down on these f5 and h5 squares. I mean, actually, even in the normal English positions, I'm pretty sure somebody's tried c4, e5 to g4, and if it's not somebody, then it's definitely me and Bullet. And actually, you know, I think Magnus played an idea like this against MVL sometimes. So, you know, I think it's a very good positional move, and also quite good in this position. But Komodo played e3, f6, knight g3. Again, yeah, you know, I would have been quite happy with going g4 there again. d4 might seem a little bit logical, but it didn't really work out very well in my engine games. I think, you know, the main problem with these things is that you know, Black's got the development problems, Black's got the weak light squares. When you play moves like d4, you know, you're giving a loose pawn for Black to attack after e takes d4, e takes d4, and you're giving yourself some dark squares to worry about. And well, there's no point giving yourself those development worries. Let Black worry about his development, because of course, you know, Black can develop then, and then Black's attacking a pawn, and then you have to defend it. You know, you're having to react to Black's development, whereas that's definitely not the case in these positions. So knight g3 was played. Komodo not looking for g4 there. And now an interesting moment, which I didn't like at all from Scorpio. If you look at what my my engines are doing, Leela and especially, but also Dragon, they were actually going for knight c6, and then something like, for example, let's just choose an example here, a5, bishop e2, knight g6, castles, bishop e7, knight c3, castles. And you know, how are you going to get your queen developed? Well, you could actually play the move rook c e8 and then queen d8 if you want to get developed. Black's very cramped, but yeah, okay, you know, I mean, you've got your king castle, the immediate danger has passed. And yeah, I mean, many games like this, but this was a very common way of playing, you know, just going knight c6 like that. What Scorpio did was play bishop g6, which is I don't know, I mean, the bishop on g6 is stopping White from getting to d3 and also stopping the queen to b1, so we're really interfering with White's development. It's just that bishop feels very exposed, you know, either to h4 to h5 or f4 to f5. I don't think that bishop's going to be able to stay there forever, and somehow I feel that the bishop g6 and then knight f7 development, it feels, yeah, a lot more vulnerable and a lot less natural than playing the bishop to f7 and the knight to g6. That's my feeling anyway. But yeah, the game continued. Bishop e2. Yeah, I've got to show you one game that happened here between Leela and Komodo. One of the games, of course, I ran on my engines. This was pretty amazing. f4 from Leela, and then Dragon just went all in with the old. Look at this. So the idea is that the knight on c1 is hanging, and I'm threatening g takes h7 when the rook is trapped on h8, on g8 rather. So we'll just be able to queen like that. But Black has got this move, bishop c5 and rook f8, and you're attacking the rook on g1. But we get queen c1, queen c2, knight e4. We get this incredible position where White's actually just got 2 pieces for 2 rooks, but a pawn on h7, and of course black's pieces are very passive. This bishop's odd on g1, and this queen is very passive on a8. But yeah, look at black getting that queen active, sneaking out through a little hole there. And well, the game was just amazing. It just carried on, and Leela had a huge initiative, you know, but the material stayed as it was. 2 minor pieces for 2 rooks, but yeah, eventually Komodo held that. But amazing play there. But I think it just shows, you know, the danger that black's in. So so bishop e2, knight f7, knight c3, and now knight a6 from Scorpio. That's a possible development plan. I mean, what black's aiming for is to play the move c6. Ooh, I'm discovering arrows. Wow, look at that. And then queen b8, and then, you know, try and get developed that way with the queen. Again, Leela was playing this idea, bishop e7, still castling, and then going rook e8 and queen d8. I mean, in that way, the black queen has got developed. It's just that these minor pieces have got no, you know, they got so little scope. But yeah, I mean, white's just you know, beautifully placed, really. You know, you can play f4 to f5. You can look for plans playing b4. You can even just take, you know, sort of play with the just play in the center with d4, and you'll still be better. So not very pleasant. I mean, knight a6 is interesting, and Scorpio played very interestingly from now on. So h4, just looking to hit this bishop on g6, and now I played this very interesting move h5. I mean, to be honest, I was more looking for well, I was looking for a few ideas. I mean, I looked at knight h6, but this turned out to be quite unpleasant for black. Actually, black just ended up giving up this h7 pawn. I think this was because after a move like g6, was getting hit with knight e4 or knight e4, and then f4 and bishop h4 here. So I'm loving these arrows. They're really easy to draw as well. Ah, what a program. Yeah, so that was rather unpleasant. h6 did seem more natural to me rather than playing h5. And then we were getting this sort of idea. d3, just allowing the queen to get active. a5, necessary to stop b4. And now we start hitting with f4. Takes, knight d6, bishop f2. You just notice how tricky all the black pieces are. Leela managed to squeeze out somehow, you know, just with, you know, odd moves, you know, all like this. Got the knight into e4, rook e1. Yeah, this was quite amazing. Queen f5, knight d4. I thought black was just getting mated here, you know, but somehow surviving because we've got our castling queen side. Never forget that. Queen c6, knight e6, knight c5, bishop d6, and king b7. I'm not quite sure how that's happened, but somehow Leela's managed to get his king safe and get this cluster of pieces, you know, all entrenched on the dark squares that are just surviving. White's still better, you know, this weakness of the pawn on g7 is quite annoying, and this knight obviously is great. But yeah, Leela survived. I mean, Leela was doing some great work to get out of that. But Scorpio played this interesting move h5, and yeah, Komodo played very concretely and directly now. I mean, my engines in actual fact just wanted to carry on with a move like d3 and then develop quietly and then just leave this pawn later as a sort of a hanging fruit for later, which also turned out quite well. But Komodo really went for it. And that's what I like about Komodo. I mean, it's an engine that really, you know, really does incredibly well with the initiative. I find sometimes that it takes, it's got quite a bit of inertia to get launched. You know, sometimes it just plays a bit too solidly, and you sort of think, yeah, you know, couldn't you have done more somehow? But when it gets launched like this, it's incredibly dangerous. And it found some great things against Scorpio. So rook h8. Queen b1, beautiful little move there. Activating the queen, brilliant, and defending the knight on h5 tactically. Rook h5 allows queen g6, forking knight f7, rook h5. Quite unusual. I mean, why is this happening? It's all happening, because it's a chess 960 position, and the king's on d8 and the queen's on a8. In a standard chess position, none of this would ever happen, of course. But that's, very important to be aware of stuff like that. And in particular, this theme that a passive queen can really have a massive effect on the rest of the position. That's actually something that I really first understood watching AlphaZero Stockfish games, because Stockfish is was incredible at using its queen for defense, and somehow AlphaZero was always managing to make Stockfish's queen passive, which was the way, in actual fact, that a lot of Stockfish's defense didn't work out in the end. And after noticing that, sitting chess 960 you come across it much more often, of course, and seeing it in this game as well. So knight d6, knight g3. Very interesting play from Komodo again. I mean, queen g6 was really my first thought, but there was a game actually Komodo against Leela, one of my games again, where you didn't actually get the pawn. Leela didn't actually take that pawn back, but somehow the efforts that White made to hold that pawn gave Leela some play, and still not enough play for the pawn, I felt, really. But somehow with a bit of activity, engines like Stockfish and Leela in particular, they can make it look like full compensation, So I think knight g3 is a much better move. And now knight takes c4. I mean, I was wondering whether rook takes h4 was the best pawn to take back. Because it makes stuff sort of neater. You keep the pawn structure kind of symmetrical. But after b3, my engines were saying it was plus 1.1, something like this. I mean, the point is, Black doesn't really have any counterplay against White's position. And White's going to put the queen to g6, going to play f3, the rook's going to go back. You'll play bishop f2, you'll castle queenside, you'll go d4, all that sort of stuff. And it's hard to really say, what is Black doing? I mean, this knight on d6 is extremely awkward. I mean, this knight on d6 was played here because it actually attacks the pawn on c4 and threatens rook takes h5, so Black is getting the pawn back. But I think, it's not a great long-term square for the piece. So if you're going to take a pawn, knight takes c4 is better. Just making use of that knight, and also getting rid of the pawn on c4 gets rid of some breaking effect on the Black center. So now Black's actually going to be able to play c6 and d5, put some sort of barrier across the White position, and maybe manage to get win itself some time that way to get developed. And d3, knight b6, h5, c6. And to be honest, I was watching this game live, and I was thinking, well, actually Scorpio's done pretty well. This doesn't look so impressive for White to me. Black's going to play d5, get a nice double pawn center. The queen's going to get out somehow, like that. And then, the king's either going to castle queenside or, move her over to there. It's really going to, not obvious to me, where all the advantage is coming from, but Komodo really plays some beautiful moves here. So knight e2, queen b8, bishop a5. Again, fine. Activate that bishop. You're able to castle kingside now, but are you really doing that much? Well, d5, d4. So putting some pressure on the center, also clamping down a bit on the pawn, but also actually allowing something much more important, which I hadn't quite realized, and that's after queen d6, White plays the move queen f5, which is actually going to stop Black from castling queenside, because you're covering this c8 square. And somehow, if you start looking at it, you sort of see that White pieces are converging on stuff. So you've got this queen attacking c8, you've got the rook, which is attacking c8, you've got the bishop, which is attacking the knight on c6, which is covering c8, you've got the pawn on d4 attacking the pawn on e5 together with the queen. And on top of that, just separate from everything else, this pawn on h5 is tying down the pawn on g7. White's got a kingside majority, and if the queen is ever exchanged, a knight comes into f5, attacking a pawn on g7 that's tied down. So you do start to see, some yeah, some measure of advantages here for white. It's just not 100% obvious. But after king c7, it starts becoming obvious, because Komodo played this incredible move b4. Wow, that's a really great move. That bishop on a5 then is supporting the pawn on b4, and you are just threatening b5 because of the pin on the c6 pawn. And the big idea here is that black can't just ignore this pawn, really, because we just take, go b5. Notice the convergence, queen and rook on the rook on c8, so you can't play c takes b5. Knight c7, takes, castles, kingside. Ha! Bet you hadn't. Bet you maybe forgotten that one. King b7, rook c3, and then just lining up on the queen side here. Here, knight c3. What a great idea here. Rook c4, takes, rook b5, and in principle we're just gonna we might just triple up on the b file, attack the b pawn. We might actually just go queen a2 and rook a1, invade on the a file. We might even choose to just open up the center. We could even just decide to swap off the queens, get a knight onto f5, and then weaken the d5 pawn. What happens, however, was pretty stunning. It was this game, wasn't it? Yeah, it was this game. Queen c6, rook e1. I'll just show it to you. It's quite a slightly longer game, but just when you see what Komodo's doing, you realise how good it is with the initiative. Great move, rook e8. If queen e8, we've got rook b6 check, very dangerous. King c7, ha! Rook b6 anyway. If you go queen takes b6, I'll go rook c8 check. So queen e8, rook b7, king d6, and I was playing through this and thinking, oh, interesting. How are you gonna do all this? And well, the way that Komodo was doing this is, just actually it's not human calculable. What Komodo did here. It was just a quiet move first of all. Then we get this very long sequence of checks. Knight takes c4, obviously d takes c4 allows queen e4, and the queen on the 8 hangs. But amazingly, we've got queen h5, and the h file is open, and actually black's threatening queen h1 mate. But now we get this lovely sequence, takes. It's queen and rook versus queen and rook. White's a pawn down, but the evaluation is +10 or something. I mean, king safety is the most important thing in major piece endings. But still, queen c2, a quiet move, no check, but teeing up for the next round of checks. Rook e8, queen check, queen a4, the next quiet move. Actually looking for stuff like f4 check at some stage, or just rook takes g7. King f5, f3, more quiet moves. Rook e1 check was threatened, so the king manages to escape. The queen stopping any sort of queen h4 check or anything like that. Queen g6, queen c2, queen c1, and now it all starts. King f2, another quiet move. Have you seen how many quiet moves there have been in this ending? It's just amazing. f5, queen h1, the king escapes. f4 check, takes, queen c1 check. My goodness me, queen e5, queen e3, king d6, and then the coup de grace, queen b6, pinning the king, and here and going queen g6 is just winning. I mean, just amazing tactics. And that's if you ask me, why do I love running engine games? I mean, I get to see this sort of stuff, and I'll never forget it, right? And it's I wouldn't be able to reproduce it, but hopefully some sort of ideas about the power of these quiet moves and these queen and rook versus queen and rook endings. The knowledge once again reinforced that it's all about king safety in these major piece endings, much more important than a couple of pawns here or there. I mean, that's never forget it again. When I see that. Back to the game, because we've got more stunning stuff here. Knight takes b4 was played, and then rook b1, knight a6, and castles. And again, if you just let white do what white wants, we're probably just going to line up on here on this piece, and then just invade on the b file. And we've also got other stuff like e4, whatever. Just giving away this pawn in front of the rook here has just it's just increase the activity of white's rooks enormously. Well, Scorpio played queen d7 in this position. Yeah, the only defense my engines were looking at was queen a3, but this turned out very badly, simply. Just checking and then taking the pawn. And then actually, there was one, yeah, worth seeing this. Knight f5, queen g5, knight g6, and knight g7. Just putting the knights on the g file and then just shielding this pawn advance all the way through. Really quite funny. But queen d7 was played by Scorpio. And now this is where it got quite spicy. Komodo, rook takes b6, takes king d6. Now you could take a number of approaches now. Actually, pretty much a lot of things are winning here, but I love Komodo's approach. Check, check, knight e4 check. Put lots of stuff on prees. Obviously, d takes c4 allows rook d1 check. So king e7, queen g5 check, king e8, and then a lovely move, a very human move actually, f4. Just leaving the knight on prees, but opening up extra lines. Whoops, sorry. Just so yeah, I mean d takes c4. We go f takes, rook h6, and knight d4. And you know, we're coming in with knight f5 here, for example. There was a lovely little line here. Knight f5, queen e6, takes, knight g7, takes, king d8, queen g5, king d7. They can sort of guess which move would you play here as white. I won't blame you if you don't find it. A4 was played by this was Komodo against Leela, and I mean actually the idea is that black's just in total zugzwang. You don't really have a good move to play here. If you try and just escape with b6, I can go check, rook check, king there, and rook f7. c5 was what Leela played, and after rook check we just took the rook and then queen the pawn, and the queen's so well placed that the king is actually shielded from checks. So yeah, amazing stuff. Queen f7 was played, and then the attack just continued. You know, queen d7, knight f5, Komodo a rook down, but you know the bishop on b6 stopping the king from escaping, and there's pins, the f-files being opened. We've got rook d1, that's this gorgeous move, queen g4, attack the rook on c8, supported the knight on f5, and also allows rook d1. And well, this was the best that actually any of my engines came up with. But this move, rook d6, is fantastic. Rook d6, what's the point? Haha, knight g7 check, forking. And if you look at the material situation here, then it's not actually that great for white, is it really? It's 2 rooks and a piece for the queen. But there's the big problem here is that, well, for the moment at least still, black's very restricted. This bishop on b6 is doing a great job of really putting the king in danger. And these passed pawns, 3 passed pawns on the king side, are really fast, and they are also somehow the position of the black king just makes them advance really quickly. So for example, rook takes h6 allows queen g7. End of story. So after c5, bishop a5, just looking after its piece, f6 check, king c6, queen e4, king b5, bishop c3. We're actually threatening the pawn on b7 here, so rook f6 allows queen b7. Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing that, you know, I'm always just blinking when I see it. Rook f6, yeah, queen b7, just, and those are the sort of things, of course, that engines see so quickly. That's a big, one of the big differences in calculation, simply. It's not that those things are impossible for humans to spot, but there are so many of them in variations and in sub-variations, and yeah, you know, you always just have to blink a bit and look, you know, just to see them. And engines just see them, yeah, just like that. Incredible. So king b6, queen g6, and now Komodo just gets down to shepherding its pawns to glory, and well, at least to one of the most amazing positions I've ever seen, actually, which is another reason for showing you this game, apart from the, you know, the piece sacrifice, the rook sacrifice, everything. f7, knight b4, g4, and it's quite interesting because Scorpio's just munching away all these pieces, clearing the way for its c-pawn, and Komodo is just going for this. Can you believe this? Knight e2, king g2, c3, queen c2. So Komodo's now having to use its queen just to block the c pawn. But yeah, these 3 pawns are so far advanced. We're just going g7 to g8 basically. The pawn will be protected by the f and the h pawn, and then afterwards we can just play on to h8 afterwards. Rook c4, queen e2, rook dc8, h8 queen. That's the second queen. Obviously, rook h8, queen takes c4. Yeah, attacks the pawn on c3, and rook c8 is no longer possible. So c2 played. Queen d8 check. Can you believe it? The idea again, renewing that idea of rook takes d8, queen takes c4. King a7, queen a5 check, king b8, queen d3. We're threatening queen takes d6, rook 4 c6, g7 c1 queen. Look at that. Black has got a queen and 2 rooks, and white has got 2 queens for the moment. Queen a d5, just amazing how the queens keep everything under control. And g8 is another queen. Look at that, just amazing. 3 queens versus queen and 2 rooks. I've just never seen this position before. And, you know, to be honest, if you ask me, I wouldn't be completely clear about who's winning here. But, well, obviously, you know, Komodo was at plus 250 or something like this, so it wasn't too worried. Queen g7. Just, you know, it's just so easy for the queens to keep everything under control. 3 centralized queens. You know, I mean, for example, the queen's covering b2, the queen's covering c2, you know, just not a problem really. So rook c2 check, king h3. Yeah, queen's covering h1, so no checks. This queen's covering d1. Rook h6 check, king g4. Yeah, I mean, it's very shogi-like in actual fact. The king's escaping forwards, you know, away from its back lines. Rook c5. And now a beautiful little, well, loads of little sacrifices here. Queen takes b7 was the choice of Komodo in my particular engine games. Queen takes b4, queen d4, and then takes. Oh, there we are. Well, if you'd taken the queen, f8 queen would have won. Queen b8 check was the alternative sack, because Komodo really did want to have 3 queens. f8, rook c8, and queen h6, picking that one up. And after queen c7, I'll always remember what Visyanand once told me, that the advantage of having the 2 bishops is that you can give up one of the bishops for the opponent's knights. That was normally in a defensive role, of course. You know, you can always give it back like that. And, well, here, the advantage of having 3 queens is that you can exchange the opponent's remaining queen and still leave yourself with 2 extra queens. You know, very important lesson, which I'm sure you'll use many times in your games. And, well, it didn't take long for Komodo to win that. Yeah, rather long video this time. Do apologise, but I think you can agree, you know, there was really lots and lots of content. I mean, I thought that the, you know, the whole way that the opening developed and the development, I thought it was really, really interesting. And as I said, I like, you know, discovering all these positional themes in Chess960, and certainly the corner pieces, and in particular the corner queen. I think that's a really big, very common theme, and really one to get used to, you know. And then afterwards, you know, the whole attack from Komodo, starting, you know, around this point where, you know, to me, it just wasn't clear, you know, why would white have any sort of big initiative here. Wasn't clear to me at all, you know. And then this whole sequence with rook takes b6, brilliant from Komodo. And then, of course, you know, well, I mean, what can you say? These types of positions with 3 queens against queen and 2 rooks, and the white king somehow being safe, covered by you know, 3 centralized queens. It's really quite beautiful, you know. And yeah, really enjoyed this one. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that one. If you like this game, then you know, give me a like, maybe subscribe, even tweet it, let people know about it, and also maybe take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which has got masses of wonderful engine games, as well as yeah, you know, really big chapter on training with engines, and you know, all the amazing ways that I've thought of training with engines that I've been using for many years. But I mean, thanks very much for watching, and I hope to see you at the next video.